This story couldn't seem more strange than if I were to tell you that this is the five families versus the moderate Tories. It sounds like some sort of, you know, strange mafia style job, but this is exactly what is taking place this weekend. And we're not talking about the marches going on down in London. We're talking what is going on in Downing Street, and will Sunak fire Suella Braverman, or will he not? Because he is now facing a Tory civil war if he does sack Suella Braverman, and he faces a Tory civil war if he doesn't sack Suella Braverman. So, like it or not, Rishi has to make a decision. Now, I said this morning um, on the Good Morning Walk, I thought Rishi, given his, what should we say, past inaction, um, I think he's very likely not to sack her. And I think, given that we are going to see, well, a threat from one of this Tory group calling itself the Five Families. Um, yeah, I do view this very much as a threat to Rishi Sunak. That if you sack Braverman, we are going to cause trouble for you. We are going to cause major trouble for you because we want our voice heard in cabinet. So bear this in mind as we go over this, that this drama is going to be playing out over the weekend. Very, very much so. And will we see Braverman gone on Monday morning? Well, I'll tell you what, if by about, I don't know, 11 o'clock on Monday, I don't think he sacks her. I think he keeps her. I think that's the deadline. I think if he's going to do nothing, then by 11 o'clock on Monday, no, she stays. And guess what? She probably goes on to say something even more ridiculous, or says something else, because I think she's starting to get the feeling that she's invincible. And you can see that by the way that she has continually progressed in saying all these things. So before we go diving into this article, because honestly, it seems like some sort of, 1940s, fictional drama, like I say, the moderate Tories versus the five families. Um, but anyway, like I say, as always, before we do go getting into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. But as always, there is the YouTube thank you button down below. And of course, there's the Pony Club as well. So yeah, let's go into this, because honestly, some of the quotes you get from some Tories here are insane. So it starts off with, Rishi Sunak is facing civil war in the Conservative Party over the future of his Home Secretary, as he is held off sacking her for saying that the police were biased for allowing pro-Palestinian marches on Armistice Day. But before what is expected to be one of Britain's biggest ever days of mass protest on Sunday, allies of Suella Braverman have claimed that more than 50 Tory MPs were fighting to help keep her job. And what have we said before about the number of potential what we were saying about that? That is a very, if there's 50 MPs that get annoyed because Braverman gets the sack, that's potentially very, very close to the magic number of letters into the 1922 committee. So that is a very dangerous territory for Rishi Sunak to enter. So some of these MPs, it continues, from the hard right Tory groups labelled the Five Families. Oh, the naming conventions of these Tory groups are insane, are getting even more crazy. But there you go. They are blaming the chief whip Simon Hart for orchestrating this plot to get rid of her. On the other side, moderate Tories are furious with Braverman for stoking tensions before the Palestinian protest. For the pro-Palestinian protest, and are now pressing Number 10 and the chief whip to sack her, saying that failure to act looks like weakness. That has been Rishi Sunak throughout all this year. Just nothing, absolutely nothing but weakness. I have reiterated this point every single time we've covered Sunak's inaction, or someone's playing up in cabinet, or there's another group openly rebelling. Why is he not instilling discipline? Why is he not doing something? But no. And as someone said today, is there any chance he can sack her and get out of this somehow? No, because you've now got two very powerful groups turning around and saying, you sack her and we riot, you don't sack her and we riot. And it's all very hilarious, but it is just frustrating that this is going on in our government. So Sunak is considering Braverman's future as Home Secretary after she defied Downing Street by submitting the controversial piece to the Times without making changes it requested. The Home Secretary has kept silent since then. I wonder why. At least she knows, there's a limit. She knows, when to keep quiet. But on Friday, she met with Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, and issued a statement of support for the police in an apparent attempt to calm the fora and stay in post. A source close to Braverman said the Commissioner outlined plans to continue working and maintain public order to ensure compliance with the law and maintain the safety of the participants, police officers, and the general public. The Home Secretary has emphasised her full backing for the police in what they will be a very complex and challenging situation, and expressed confidence that any criminality will be dealt with robustly. So I love that. I absolutely love that. She went too far, realised, oh, okay, I've gone a bit too far, and now she's tried to backpedal and release a statement to the Met Commissioner herself that she supports the police. Very, very clearly realizes, I think, that she went too far. But of course, there's still pressure to sack her. And like I say, if we get to that magic moment, if she's not gone by 11 o'clock Monday morning, I think she's going to end up staying. I don't think Sunak's going to sack her. And as the moderate Tory said, already quoted at the top, looks like weakness. Well, guess what? Rishi Sunak is already a weak, lame duck prime minister. So it would be pretty much on brand for him. So since Hamas triggered the war with Israel on the 7th of October by killing over 1,400 people, and by taking approximately over 240 hostages, there have been a series of marches in London and around the UK of up to 100,000 demonstrators. The protests have been calling for a ceasefire, with Palestinian officials saying that more than 10,000 people have been killed in Gaza. The marches have been largely peaceful, but there have been some arrests for inciting racial hatred. Sunak said that he had been assured by the police that they were going to take all steps to ensure that remembrance services are safeguarded from any protests. He added, "It is because of those who fought for this country and for the freedom that we cherish that those who protest can do so. But they must also do so respectfully and peacefully." The Prime Minister's spokesperson said on Friday that the ongoing internal process within Number 10 was taking place and there were no updates on what will happen to Braverman. Whitehall sources have suggested that Sunak could take the decision on her future next week. So now we'll see what happens. Next week, apparently, we'll find out. But we've already said up at the top, you've got 50 Tory MPs, and wait for the quote in a moment. However, Tory moderates expressed anger that Sunak had not acted decisively against the Home Secretary. Sunak acting decisively. That's not Rishi Sunak. Who had also departed from government policy in recent weeks by trying to ban charities from giving tents to the homeless and describing pro-Palestinian protests as hate marches. Like I say, she's been on an absolute tirade this week. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, refused to express confidence in Braverman on Friday, along with Robert Halfon, a senior minister, who said it was a decision for number 10. So as you can see, she has split the Tory party into over this very issue. So over the last 2 days, the One Nation Conservatives have privately expressed their discontent with Braverman's behaviour to the Chief Whip, who leads that group by chance. Well, that would be Penny Mordaunt, possibly one of the biggest contenders for the Tory leadership contest. That, of course, is if she survives the next general election. But of course, it looks like her seat in Portsmouth is not safe. So she might lose her seat for that. But hey, we'll see what happens when it comes to a general election. With, of course, several sources saying that they have rarely seen such anger within the moderate wing of the party. Yeah, I'm not surprised, because they realize this is just piling on people's hate and disgust for the Tory party. And they know that they need to, calm their image down a bit, before they get to a general election. And Braverman is not helping them on this. One centrist former minister said that they have accused Braverman of what would be removed within weeks in a reshuffle, unless she quits first. As a party of our message on immigration and crime is strong, but the message has become toxic, they said. The only question now is whether Suella decides to resign in protest before she is sacked. That's a possibility. However, I think she will wait to be sacked. I think that is the case. Maybe she could resign in protest. That is a possibility. But what sends a stronger message? I think being sacked for her, should we say, future prospects sends a stronger signal to those potential supporters. So saying, look, I was sacked because I was, quote, cancelled for saying all those things that we all know to be true. And by the way, Miriam Cates later on defends Suella Braverman in this, so don't be surprised at that. Another senior in the party has also criticised the attempts to block the pro-Palestinian protests on Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday. David Davis, the former Brexit secretary and advocate for civil liberties, said that the cenotaph is not an exercise in sentimentality, but remembrance and what those wars were fought over: the right to protest, the right to freedom of speech. I am used to the Home Secretary's behaving with a little more gravitas, and it's not just an exercise of taste; it's an exercise in necessarily of the job. They have both behaved in the fray as best they can, because they do not inflame or flare things up that could go through perfectly peacefully. Of course, talking about the problems. Many people are worried that because Braverman has really inflamed things, that something bad could happen today. I really hope it doesn't. But this is why there's now extra police down in London, because of this. This might happen. And like I say, it's better to be, prepared than not be. David Linton, the Conservative de facto Deputy Prime Minister and, of course, ex-MP, warned against the idea that ministers should be able to ban protests in advance, saying that those, including some of my former colleagues, arguing or even implying that ministers should be able to ban demonstrations, might reflect on whether they would be happy to see such powers exercised by a left-wing government, he said. Very true. You don't want this to do this now, because, well, there's a lot of right-wing protests we would love to ban, namely, of course, all the stuff organized by Tommy Robinson for a start, but I doubt she was saying many on the right would cry too many tears for that. In defense of Braverman, here we go. An ally of the Home Secretary said at least 52 MPs from, quote, the five families of the hard Tory groupings had promised to stand by her if Downing Street attempts to sack her for defying Sunak. A source close to this group has said that at least 2 MPs were on the government payroll and were threatening to resign if Braverman is sacked. So, if she does get the sack, there could be a mass resigning. Some have also said that they will write letters to Sir Graham Bradley calling for a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister if she is removed, one source said. So, if she is removed, or if she does get the sack from the Prime Minister, then all bets are off. Anything could literally happen that next week. Anything could happen. And as I said, everything always happens when I go on holiday, and that's what I'm doing next week. So, are we ready for a week of potential Tory chaos? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy! This could get interesting very quickly if she does get the sack and these MPs do follow through on these threats. The MPs are said to be particularly angry with Hart, who they claim is attempting to gather support for Braverman to be removed from office. These MPs come from, among other members of the European Research Group, the Northern Research Group, the New Conservatives, the Common Sense Group, and No Turning Back. Wow, a new group we've never heard of before. Who are No Turning Back? What? That sounds like some really bad Tory version of NSYNC. We're No Turning Back, and this is our new single, Take the Tents Off the Street. Those who have been contacted since it became clear that the Home Secretary position was under threat on Thursday. The groups have been connected by WhatsApps, texts, and phone calls asking MPs if they were willing to come forward in an event that Sunak attempts to sack Braverman. The source said the five families was a reference to a, quote, dark comic reference of the five families who have been alleged to control the mafia in the US. And this is the threat. One MP said, there are many people upset about this because Suella has made a very good point about the Met and the treatment of demonstrators. But she also represents what many of our members and constituencies actually say and think. To hound her out would be untenable. The MP declined to say whether they had discussed what action would be taken if she was sacked or removed beyond protesting, but added, quote, it would not stop there. Colleagues are very upset about this. Our voice must be heard in the cabinet. That, ladies and gentlemen, that is a threat. that is a very mafia type threat. And it does go on, but it talks more about the Palestine protests, and that's what we're talking about. I will tell you this now: if she gets the sack, and these MPs follow through with their threats, all bets are off. Because I'll tell you this now: if I were Rishi Sunak and they did this, I'd go, okay, I'm calling a general election. That's what I would do. If they started acting up in this way and they threatened, my position, I just go, okay, I'm pulling the lever. I'm pulling it. General election time, baby. It's your fault. That's what I would do. That's what I would 100% do. And especially they would start screaming to the rafters, and I would just enjoy the music as they wailed through the House of Commons about the impending disaster that would now befall them. So, yeah, if she does get the sack next week, all bets are off. All bets are off. Will they follow through with these threats? Will they go through with it? They've already said, oh yeah, it's not going to stop there. We're going to keep on causing trouble. We are going to make our voices heard in cabinet. You heard it them say it right there. That is a mafia type threat if I have ever heard of one. This is really the five families territory. Um, yeah. Um, so as we've always been predicting for the longest time, the Tory civil war has been very much a cold war for quite some time. But it looks like this week, this Tory cold war is about to heat up into a full-blown civil war. So we'll see what happens, but oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy. Things could get very interesting next week if she gets the sack. Very interesting very quickly. And then if she doesn't get the sack, what will those moderate groups do? Because by the sounds of it, they ain't happy either. So if she doesn't get the sack, what might they do in response to that? Things could get very interesting next week. Very interesting indeed. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.